Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is if one person has their moon in Cancer and the other one has it in Sagittarius. I decided to make videos just for the moon signs because I realized that, my partner and I both have the sun in Sagittarius and the moon in Virgo. And you would think we would be carbon copies of each other, but we're not. And that's because, the sun can be in the suns can be in different houses, the moons can be in different houses, and that will add influences. And of course, you have other planets and other aspects that totally can alter the overall personality traits of each person. But I was thinking about how when we're interacting with each other from that emotional place, how that can be a bit problematic sometimes when you have the same moon sign, because you're both going to react to things in the same way. And so I was thinking, like, okay, how do other people deal with things when they have different moon signs? Forgetting about the sun signs. And the two signs of Cancer and Sagittarius form what is called an inconjunction, meaning that they are 150 degrees apart. Now, of course, that's if they are within a certain degree span of one another. But even if they're not, it still is this weird combination. And it seems like it totally doesn't fit. But I have found in some cases with inconjunctions that I can draw some things that are things the two signs have in common with each other. So with Cancer and Sagittarius, the one thing I would say is that they're both emotional, but they're expressing emotions differently. Cancer is a water sign, and this is a feminine sign. And so these signs, the earth and the water signs, look at life from a subjective way. But I think especially the water signs are very subjective, meaning that they make everything personal to them. When we say a person needs to become more objective, we're saying that they need to get out of their own situation and their own head, their own heart, and try to put themselves in other people's shoes and not just be reacting to how they would feel, but how another person may feel that might be a totally different type of reaction. And so anyway, Sagittarius is a masculine sign, which is yang energy, and it has a tendency to be very aggressive. I mean, as a fire sign in general, I don't think of Sag in particular as being really aggressive, but all fire signs get accused of insensitivity. And just virtue of my sun being in Sagittarius, I feel that that's the case, even if somebody doesn't actually say that to me, that they are implying it. And I can handle it because I know what they mean. You know, Cancer as a sign can be very, very tuned in emotionally to somebody else. And there is a lot of merit to somebody having that capability. It's not saying, oh, that's bad or anything like that. But when you're talking about this combination, there can be many misunderstandings that are based on the emotional intelligence involved. That was the name of a book. I never read it, but what kind of emotional intelligence do both of these signs possess? So Cancer people, when they are not at their best, and the moon sign, I kind of read that way as the more shadow elements. And I think somebody took offense to that because it made it sound like, oh, the moon is a bad influence or something like that. And I just want to clarify that I'm not implying that. But the sun and the moon have different meanings in astrology. And the moon does appear to be reflecting the light of the sun. So it is going to be in the backdrop to some extent in terms of the person's incarnation, what they came here to do. The feelings, when we say react to something, they're reactions. Re means again, so you're acting again. There is the action that takes place, and then there is the reaction. A reaction is a response. Again, even the word response, means that there is something else that the person is engaged in. With the sun, the person is taking the initiative in their life. The moon is like taking whatever is out there and, reflecting back to it. So it's a totally different expression. You think of the sun and the creative expression of the sun. The moon is associated with creativity, but I think a lot of times the moon represents all of those memories of experiences that we had that we are kind of rehashing and turning into creative self-expression. But the sun is actually doing the art of creation. So, because Cancer is ruled by the moon, it in addition to being a water sign, I mean, Pisces and Scorpio are the other water signs, but Cancer is actually ruled by the moon, so it is really associated with emotions and also that sense of changing emotions. So sometimes there can be like a moody quality to Cancer people in general, let alone somebody who has the moon in Cancer. So your moods may fluctuate like I was going to say like the different stages of the moon. Is that what they call it? Stages? Whatever. That's the best I can do right now. And so that can, create instability sometimes because you're not always going to just be on an even keel in that sense. And if you have some kind of a trigger, if there is some kind of outer force that is, making you feel a certain way, that you can be off to the races. And the moon in Sagittarius is jovial. Jove is another name for Jupiter, the ruler of Sagittarius. And if you think of the word jovial, it's very happy-go-lucky, just always laughing, that kind of thing. And that is how the moon in Sagittarius displays its emotional nature. It just is very upbeat. And so this kind of combination can be problematic because you can have one person, the Cancer moon, who is fluctuating emotionally, and everybody can have a bad day or a few bad days where you're in a funk, right? And you feel like out of sorts. That's not abnormal. It's only when it persists that it can be problematic. But, if it's just something that you're in for whatever reason, you have to accept it all and not resist it. But with a Cancer person, this is very commonplace to kind of cycle into these different moods. And when you're feeling more vulnerable, which the moon in Cancer can have kind of this emotional vulnerability, you're looking for somebody to confide in and to comfort you. because you may have a lot of sentimentality. The moon in Cancer, oh my gosh. I mean, I don't even have any inner planets in water, and I can get into these sentimental moods. And I can't even imagine having the moon in Cancer, how, past memories, good times, can just make a person feel like they want to just live in the past, and that tends to happen with somebody who has the moon in Cancer, is they tend to love the past. Cancer is associated with history, family history. Even though this is the moon and not Mercury, I wouldn't be surprised if the moon in Cancer individual has a photographic memory. And the moon in Sagittarius is not like that. Fire energy is very progressive. We call that, people think of progressiveness or whatever as being a political affiliation. I'm not talking about anything like that. I'm talking about this idea of moving forward, always moving forward, not looking back, not clinging to the past. And so, it's very interesting because when I was a kid, I knew a girl who was a sun in Cancer, and she seemed like a little old lady when she was like, when we were both, 8 years old. I just remember she was very particular in her, when we were eating our food and stuff. And she even had salt and pepper shakers that she brought with her. I mean, I laugh at that now because I think of that. That's so Cancerian, to be all about the food to the nth degree. I mean, that almost rivals Taurus if you think about it. And I think Cancer rules the stomach. So there is an association, I think, with Cancer and nourishment. But the moon position, I think, can also sometimes, so I was saying a little old lady, that a moon in Cancer person can be quite old-fashioned, and a moon in Sagittarius person might even seem kind of childish, immature, because of their emotional nature, that it's very boisterous, loving a good party, not wanting to settle down and commit and things like that, because they want their freedom. And so this combination can produce a lot of frustration. And you might have the person who has the moon in Cancer, they might have their sun in Gemini, which is the opposite sign of Sagittarius. And the other person may have their sun in Virgo, the moon in Sagittarius person. And overall, the Gemini person is much more old-fashioned in a sense, especially if they have other Cancer inner planets. So that's what makes it so fascinating, is that I'm not implying that the moon in Sagittarius person is immature overall, but just that they're emotionally, they may seem like a little bit of a loose cannon, because fire energy, if it's in the moon sign, the person sometimes can even have a bit of a temper. Again, you have to look at different things like the sun, the aspects to Mars, which can be the temper. See what sign Mars is in, because that'll give you a hint too. But see if the moon aspects Mars in a challenging way. And I just feel like this sort of person who is a moon in Sagittarius person doesn't really want to get too heavy with emotions. If they do lose their temper, it's very brief, and they are not ones to hold a grudge. The moon in Cancer individual can be much more likely to hold on to grievances because of their memory, the elephant's memory, if you will. So, the challenges to this relationship can be that the Cancer person doesn't think that the moon person really loves them because they're not expressing their emotions, and maybe a very delicate way, maybe in a very delicately poetic, romantic way. Maybe it's more of a masculine kind of way. You know, it's interesting. I was listening to a song by Rod Stewart called Mandolin Wind. Some of you probably know that song. And if you just even hear the title, it sounds so poetic. And Rod Stewart is a Capricorn, but he has a moon in Sagittarius. You know, actually, this works out perfectly because I didn't even think about him having the moon in Sagittarius, but he does. Now, if we think of his creative output, if you think of a person's creative output as the moon can really be inspirational for things like that. When I listened to the lyrics of that song, and a music critic said something about that song where they said it's unbearably romantic or something, but I think it was a male critic, and there's a real masculine expression in the lyrics. You should listen to them, or you should read them sometime, and listen to the song for sure, because it's not. It's almost like saying, you know, he has some line where he says, "I'm not good at." Saying, expressing things. But then he has like another, it's just poetic and masculine at the same time. And so sometimes two people can really be trying to love the other person, but it's getting lost in translation. And this is why it's so important to keep an open heart. Because if you have an open heart, you're going to think the best of the other person. I'm not talking about being a delusional individual where you're just excusing blatant violations of a relationship. I'm talking about in judging too harshly how somebody chooses to express themselves. You want to be as open-minded as possible. And, as generous as possible is what I meant to say. So, but let's go back to let's say something good about this combination. I think that the Cancer person can teach the Sagittarius person how to be more sensitive. There's always room for improvement when it comes to that. And I know that I have improved. I've had to improve because, it finally dawned on me that people, they feel things, they react to things differently. The Sagittarian can teach the Cancer person to laugh at life more, not to take things too personally, not to take things too seriously, because Cancer can be very serious. And I'm saying this like you're a sun in Cancer, if you are the moon in Cancer, but really these moon signs, they can almost resemble the sun sign. Even though there are differences in how the sun and moon expresses a sign, there are many similarities too, as well. So the other thing that I would say that you may share an interest in is music or other art forms. And you may have different reasons for this. Again, for Cancer, it's like kind of emotional lubrication, not that you need it. For Sagittarius, it's just that kind of visionary quality that's associated with art at the highest levels, where you know that the person is channeling something and they're producing this wonderful work. And that's in other areas. You may share spiritual pursuits. And, when you have the water and the fire, they're both, I think, because they are channeling emotions or passion more with the fire. It's more about passion. It's really about taking life more seriously. If you see people who kind of go through the motions in life, they tend to be rather emotionless. They don't seem to really be moved by much of anything. And, I realize that being overly emotional can be a negative thing sometimes, but not having emotion, being so detached where you're just like, it's almost like being numb. And that to me is a sign that the person really isn't engaging life, that they're kind of tolerating life. They're trying to get through it, but they're not really, they don't really care, and that's kind of concerning when people are like that. So I think that there's a definite good side to having emotions and feeling them and expressing them. So I don't want to get that mistaken by people, misunderstood. I was going to say something else. But being able to have that kind of spiritual connection can get people through a lot of trials and tribulations in life, to have that kind of a backbone. So, because if one person is spiritual and the other person is secular, that can be a problem. It doesn't mean that they have to walk in lockstep in terms of their religious or spiritual beliefs, but I mean, just to not have anything, and then the other person's very devoutly spiritual or religious, that can form a clash, I think. And the moon is that intuitive nature, so that has to be looked at. Okay, well, that's what I have for you. I hope that this resonated. If you would like a private reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.